know if I warned you, Jamie, but we usually record our meetings and it's on YouTube, so people who miss it.
Sounds like fun.
You're probably
Jamie.
putting things on the record all the time, though. So.
Yeah. So yeah, why don't we go around and do our usual brief introductions, just for those of us that Jamie might not already know. I'll start, I guess, this time. Doug Hanna. Jamie, I'm kind of the facilitator for this group and partner in crime with Martin, who run it and record it. Longtime Natick resident, frequent volunteer at the church on the other side of the common, First Congregational, and I guess that's me. Sarah?
I'm Sarah Hanna. Been a town meeting member for 20-something years, volunteered various things, kind of focused on primarily on environmental issues.
And Elaine, how about you?
Elaine Ostroff, relatively new to Natick. I'm sorry. Hello, hey Ian. Elaine, relatively new to Natick. My claim to fame is that I'm Josh's mother.
And once you get to know her, you realize she's got many other claims to fame too. And Martin, of course.
Martin Kessel, a bunch of things. Town meeting, chair of the Open Space Advisory Committee. I was on the 5 Auburn Street Committee. And I guess my emotional energy these days is tied up in the Dam Committee.
Right. Yeah. Bill?
Hi, Bill Ramage. I guess my claim to fame is that one of the first people I met when I moved to Natick 8 years ago was Pat Conaway. And I've been working with him ever since on keeping Natick beautiful. And I'm also a town meeting member and other environmental issues. And one of the co-founders of Eco Natick. I don't know whether you've heard of us yet, but we're up and coming environmental place to go. So that's me.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Brian?
Good morning, Brian McPherson. I live on Oak Knoll Road, abutting Snake Brook, and I'm a water quality advocate. And appreciate you being here. Looking forward to what you have to say. Thank you.
And Carrie?
Hi, good morning, Jamie. Glad you could make it. Yeah, Carrie Buckfield. We've got a fertile ground of concerned environmentalists. I'm also a town meeting member, as treasurer for Pat's Keep Natick Beautiful, as co-founder of Renewable Natick, and which, as you probably know, kind of was the architect, at least for the resolution that town meeting passed in October 2018 to kind of get the net zero plan moving. So that was, they're doing quite well with Jillian's assistance. Yeah.
Thanks. Tom?
Yeah, I am a town meeting member, a new one just last year, and I volunteer with Spark and climate group 350 Mass Spectral West along with Debbie Marion. And I've been a Natick resident for, I'm a newbie, I've only been here about 30 years.
Great. Sally?
Hi, Jamie. I'm Pat Conaway's sister. That is my name to fame. And I really do enjoy this group of vibrant community folks. I've been here about 5 years, but I'm looking forward to what you're sharing and I'm a fan of Natick.
Who couldn't be? Carol?
Hi, good morning, Jamie. I'm Carol Berkowitz. Nice to meet you. And I am a town meeting member. I live on Lake Cochituate and been concerned about the lake for a long time. And I enjoy working at the Peace Garden at the Spiritualist Center. So I'm a peace leader, peace advocate. Thank you. Good to hear your voice, what you have to say.
Thank you, Carol. Cindy?
Good morning, I'm Cindy Bates. I live on Lincoln Street near the fire station. I've been here, I guess it'll be 3 years this fall. And I'm a very neglectful steward of Schoolage Field under the auspices of Keep Natick Beautiful. And I'm the trail steward for the Takawambe Trail. And through that work, I got involved a little bit in finding many GIS and other errors related to that area. And also we're working on getting some goats. I think it'll be next year.
Yay.
Cool. Pat?
Pat Conway. Keep Natick Beautiful, and kind of together with Sally and Carrie, we started the Coffee with a Purpose, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago or so. And yeah, it's been great working with all of you folks, and especially how Doug and Sarah and Martin have kind of continued to pass the torch to you and help us keep the coffee conversations going.
Thanks, Pat. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Davis. I'm a little bit late. I'm not sure I know Jamie. I'm not sure what he looks like. But I'm a long-term 32-ish plus years in Natick, live across Oak Street from the old sand pits, which is now the new soccer fields. Don't have a heck of a lot of involvement with the town. And that's my claim to fame.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, you look like you're on your iPhone. So when Jamie starts talking, you'll be able to see his face fill up your screen. Hopefully you got a nice big phone there.
Okay.
Ian.
Good morning, Jamie and all. My name is Ian. I'm the director of the Spiritual Center in Natick, and always an engaged citizen and curious to hear what we'll talk about today. And I'm excited that Jamie's our new town administrator, and I'm looking forward to seeing what unfolds in the years ahead.
Thank you. Brinley?
Good morning. I'm Brinley Vickers. I'm a 23-year resident of Natick. My claim to fame is knowing all of you people. I served on the original recycling committee for a whole bunch of years before we disbanded that and turned it into the sustainability committee. Scott also worked with us on that. So let's see, I was on the Pay As You Throw Task Force Committee. I'm very excited to hear you today, Jamie. Happy to have you as our new town administrator. And there you go. I'm a town meeting member.
Great. And Sam?
Hi, Sam Gloyd. Let's see, I'm a retired psychotherapist, a biker, involved at Common Street Spiritual Center, and husband of an esteemed educator in Natick, Karen Gloyd.
Okay, and I see Ricky has joined us. Ricky?
Yeah, I went all around every barn there is in order to get here this morning.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, Ricky Ball. Glad to see you, Sam. It's been a long time. And I don't know, everybody here knows me, I think. I don't need to go into a long spiel.
Okay, sounds good. And Rick? Rick's currently muted.
Sorry, joining you late. So yeah, just Rick Devereaux at town meeting in District 8, and fairly new to Natick, but getting to know it and loving it. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Jamie, you've got, I guess, quite a reputation. This is the largest crowd we've had a Coffee with a Purpose in quite a bit. So clearly everybody's interested in what you have to tell us.
Great.
Yeah, not only in your current position, but yeah, I know you've served multiple positions in the town. So we're anxious to hear what you have to say. If you want to share your screen to show anything, that's an option too. Folks, I've taken the liberty of muting just about everybody just to try to hold down background noise, and then we'll use our usual method of when we open it up for general conversation and questions, if you could use the raise hand feature, that'll kind of keep some order to us, and people can come off mute when it's time for them to speak. So Jamie, turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. I'll be fully honest, I didn't prepare too much for today. So I'm definitely here to take this conversation wherever it takes us, and can certainly talk through me and my role and what we're trying to do as an administration. But I'll give a little bit of background, since it sounds like some of you have not met me yet, and some of you have. I see a lot of familiar faces and people that I've worked with, and I see some faces of people that I haven't. This is my first time meeting over Zoom, some of you. So Jamie Errickson, I have been working for the town for about 7.5 years now. I started with the town as the Community and Economic Development Director. Basically, that meant that I was overseeing anything related to development, public, private, and all the rules and regulations that go along with that, like our zoning bylaw amendments and other things related to the physical built environment. In that role, we worked on a lot of initiatives. I was in that role for about 4 years. We advanced such things as the Contiguous Rail Trail. I worked a lot with Jillian on sustainability and net zero plan. We did a lot with regards to affordable housing. We advanced the Route 27 North Main Street project. We advanced a number of zoning initiatives such as adult use cannabis and some of the other advancements with regards to some of our downtown neighborhood district zoning. We also completed the Natick 2030 master plan. I managed that project for a number of years. You might have been surveyed as part of that, or seen us at the Natick Days or some other locations. That was the town's first comprehensive master plan since about the 1970s. And we did a number of other planning efforts through that time of those 4 years. Some of the things that are still ongoing of what I worked on, everything from little things like just advancing some of the outcomes of the Natick 2030 master plan, advancing some of our pedestrian mobility improvements, to we actually just implemented a new online permitting system for the entire building department and code department. So what that means is that if you're doing something to your house that requires a building permit, you can log into the town's website and it'll take you to a portal whereby you can just input your information, apply for it online, pay for it online, and then it limits the need to come into town hall. You can still certainly do that, but it limits the need to come into town hall. And we've definitely learned a lot from the pandemic with regards to advancing some of these technologies to ensure that people can still do business, even if they're not able to get into town hall to fill out a physical piece of paper. And we really tried to make sure that we could advance some of those initiatives. And that project actually started a number of years ago when I was still in the Community and Economic Development Department. From there, I actually took what I call a year sabbatical, where I went and worked for a state agency. It was Mass Development, and they're the state's economic development arm. They're actually a quasi-state government, part of the state government. That was a good job, but it wasn't quite piquing my interest. And then COVID hit, and I actually got recruited back, gently recruited back for the Deputy Town Administrator for Operations position. It was when Bill Chenard had left. He was the Deputy TA for Operations for a number of years. You might recall him from other initiatives as well, because he held many hats in town. He was DPW Director at one point. He was, I think, in the assessing department. He kind of jumped around in town government for a number of years. When he went to take the town administrator job in Pembroke, I applied for and then eventually received his position as Deputy TA for Operations. Was in that position right after COVID hit. So I started there about May, coming up on actually just over 2 years ago. And then about a year later, the full town administrator position became available, to which I applied for. And this time last year, actually, I was selected for the position by the select board. So I've been in this position for 1 year so far. I think technically it's a July 1 contract, but they did not, they selected me as the candidate at the end of June, and then we came to contract terms by August. So, so I've been in this position for about a year now, and it's been an interesting year, coming out of the pandemic and advancing all the initiatives that predate the pandemic, while also ensuring that we can still function as a government during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So we are dealing with a lot of just recovery type issues. But it's been a great experience for the past year. We were really building a great team here. And I can get into that in a little bit, but just a little bit more about my background in history. Again, I've been working in Natick for about 7.5, 8 years. My education, though, is in planning, urban planning, regional planning, town planning. I have a master's degree from UMass Amherst in planning. I worked as an intern for the town of Amherst when I was in grad school. I went from there and worked for the city of Lowell for a number of years, for about 7 years, where I did, among other things, I administered their planning board and ran their brownfields program. For those who are not familiar with brownfields, it's basically remediation sites or sites that have soil contamination or groundwater contamination. Lowell had a very active program, given its history of a mill town, whereby there was a lot of contaminated parcels, and we were dealing with a lot of that work. We had a strong partnership with the EPA, who gave us a lot of grant funding. I think at one point we were managing a couple $1 million worth of EPA grant funds just to clean up various sites in the city. And then working on things on redevelopment there as well. And then I went from there to the city of Everett for about 3 years. I got recruited as their first planning and development director, built up their department, including creating a sustainability position. We got them applied for the Green Communities funding and really advanced a lot of their environmental initiatives as well. When it kind of came to another very sort of urban industrial community, advance a lot of their initiatives with regards to redevelopment of their former, industrial properties. And then from there, I came to Natick. I got the job that I just mentioned about 7-8 years ago. I actually live now in Holliston, but I'm originally from Connecticut. I grew up in a small town outside of Hartford, right by the University of Connecticut. So definitely appreciate the small town feel of Natick, although the town I grew up in was even smaller. We moved there when I was a kid from the Philadelphia region. There were about 7,000 people in the town. So it was a very small town. Now there's about 15,000. So it's grown up since that time. But I do appreciate, again, Natick to me is a great community. It's got a lot of things that I really enjoy working in when it comes to community relations and community development. It's got a great downtown, but it's also got some challenges with regards to its roadway network, with regards to access to open space, sustainability that we're all grappling with. We're in a very strong real estate market, so we're dealing with affordable housing. It's just got everything that, to me, I find exciting when working within a community, because it means every day is a little bit different, and every day you get to meet new people and talk about issues that really affect people's daily lives. And my goal in my work, and this has been throughout my career, is to just really try to advance a community in becoming just a better place for everybody involved in the future. In my opinion, a community that is standing still is a community that is not sort of taking action and taking control of its own destiny. Every community changes, whether or not you are proactive or have no action. In some respects, taking no action is still an action in and of itself. So I'd much rather work with community leaders and the community as a whole to say, how can we continue to advance the envelope? How can we make this place better? And that's what I've had as my mantra throughout my career. How can we continue to take advantage of the opportunities that we have as a community to make this community a better place? So that's a little bit of background on me and how I got to here. In the last year as town administrator, we've been really just rebuilding. The pandemic has led to a lot of things, really. New focuses of our staff, while keeping true to our old focuses. I mentioned the building permit system, for example. But we see a lot of other improvements that we can do for the community as a whole, and we are trying to advance those today. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But we also had quite a bit of just turnover. I know I moved up, and so I had a deputy TA position that I had to backfill. We were able to be successful in recruiting John Marshall, who you might remember from his days on the Rec and Parks Department. He took his own sabbatical. It was about a 7-year sabbatical in his case, whereby he went and worked for the towns of Arlington and Belmont, and then has been back with the town here in Natick for about 9 months, and has been an amazing fit for the community. And we had a number of other department heads and other key staff throughout the town turnover. We're still grappling with hiring challenges, as I think all industries are. So for example, our police department has about 6 open positions, and we were actively trying to figure out how can we bring people into the force to keep our community safe. Our DPW department has anywhere from 4 to 6 open positions, depending on how recruitment happens there. We're grappling with a very strong private market that makes some of the entry-level positions for the town less desirable because we're competing with just everybody else who's also competing for talent and labor right now. Similarly with our facilities department, we have a new department head there who's been in that position for about a year, and he's doing a fantastic job, but we're still having challenges with getting people into some of our entry-level positions really throughout the organization. Community and economic development, they have a couple job openings right now. I think every department has been impacted in some way by the pandemic when it has come to hiring and recruitment. We're all experiencing some shortfalls when it comes to that. So in reality, what we've been really trying to do is just keep advancing the initiatives that we can advance while also being mindful that we want to keep our talented employees that are here, and we want to make sure that we're at least meeting the basic needs of our community. And we've been doing, in my opinion, a great job at it. The staff in Natick that works for the town are great. I would say that we're all a little bit understaffed and overworked at the moment, but I think people are really rising to the occasion and doing a great job here in the town. Some initiatives that we are advancing. We actually received a couple grants that came from the state to help us advance a few initiatives when it has come to post-pandemic response. One of those will deal with actually human services and access to human services. So we actually got some needs assessment and funding to do planning efforts with regards to human services. And I call that sort of a cradle to grave type analysis of really everything from rec and parks to community senior center work, social work, and everything in between. How can we advance those partnerships that we have in human services to sort of learn from the pandemic about where our stressors are and where we can make improvements to access to human services for all people in the community. And we also have a grant to just improve our communications networks. That's everything from the soup to nuts from the website to social media outreach and engagement to everything in between. We learned a lot from the pandemic with regards to the need for all different modes of communication to get the word out about how people can access services for their government. And then sustainability initiatives. I know this is a big focus of this group. I've known Jillian now, I think, for my entire time with the town, 7+ years. And she and I have consistently been partnering on various initiatives, and she's a huge asset for the town. So some things that we're working on there is just the day-to-day things of ensuring that we have a strong sustainable approach with our practices in town. You know, we've maximized our ability to add solar on town buildings. We're looking at how can we ensure that we get good pricing on our energy costs from sustainable places to just our vehicle fleet. She has made inroads with our vehicle supervisor down at DPW, and we're actually purchasing, hybrid vehicles for our police force, which is amazing that we can do that. We're one of the first communities in the country to do that as well. A lot of people look to some of the larger communities who are doing that to be the first, and that's like the New York Cities or the LAs of the world. And we did the same, but now we're actually trying to advance some of those initiatives as well. And we're trying to figure out ways to also train the staff, because with hybrid vehicles, you also need mechanics that know how to work on these vehicles. And so we're actually doing a training program with our fleet supervisor. And she's made huge inroads with our facilities department. A lot of our new infrastructure investments when it comes to facilities such as heating and cooling systems, we're first looking at what are sustainable models for that, can we implement those? We were successful at receiving a grant for both design and construction funding. It doesn't cover the entire cost, but design and construction funding to do a very advanced system at the Morse Institute Library that's going to be installed over the next 6 to 12 months with regards to the heating and cooling system. Thanks to Jillian's work on that front, it'll be sort of a model. We actually had the Massachusetts DEP and then the sustainability arm of state government to partner with UMass Amherst to actually help us on designing this project, and they're very interested in seeing it go to construction. We're obviously advancing other sustainability measures as well through Jillian's hard work. I feel like every week she comes to me with another grant opportunity and another great thinking of how can we advance some sustainability measures. She's just a major asset for the community. So that's a little bit about me. I feel like I've been talking now for a little while. I'd love to answer questions or hear what you all want to learn more about. I try to just give really, really high level some things that that we've been working on as a town administration. By no means is that exhaustive, because I haven't even tapped some of the initiatives with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and other initiatives with regards to the town finances and how we're looking at all departments from a sustainability lens. But I'd love to hear from all of you to see where you're most interested in learning more about. So, Doug, I'll pass it back to you. And maybe
yeah. Thank you so much for that. Overview. Looks like we've already got some hands up. So, Cindy, I think you're first. You got to come off mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
As a relatively new person, the concept of a town administrator is kind of new to me.
Oh,
and
sure.
I get all these initiative, but I'd love to have the nutshell version of what's your job description.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I should have focused on that, huh? I take for granted that people know what town administration means, or the town administrator. And that's actually another initiative of not necessarily town administration, but the select board in the town as a whole. The select board has actually initiated a town governance study committee. They're about 4 months into, they started up in April and May. And they're just looking at town governance in Natick. Natick is a pretty large community of 37, almost 40,000 people. We're one of the largest remaining, we're actually the largest remaining communities in Massachusetts with just a town administrator. And there's a little bit of nuance with regards to town administrator versus town manager form of government. In essence, I am the chief operating officer for the community. So I'm in charge, I'm hired by and in charge of basically ensuring that the initiatives and the policies of the select board, which is the chief executive officer branch of the community, are acted out or acted on by town staff. I'm also just the day-to-day operations person for the community. Now, I do have a deputy town administrator for operations and a deputy town administrator for finance. They both report to me, as well as pretty much all staff on the town side of government. So schools have the superintendent and the school committee. They do everything related to schools. On the town side, we have the select board and town administrator. So basically public works, facilities, all the finance divisions, collector, treasurer, comptroller, assessors, and all the other operations, planning and development, building department, health department, libraries, they all pretty much report to me as town administrator. And I just help them. I see my role as helping the department heads and the people who are doing the day-to-day work of the town, giving them the resources or the guidance or the leadership that they need to do their job really well, while also ensuring that I can work with the select board to make sure that I'm understanding what their concerns or challenges or opportunities are, what they want to see from their from government and what they want to see from a policy perspective, because they're the 5 volunteer elected members on the executive side of government, ensuring that I can learn from them what they want, but also funnel up to them what information they need to make informed decisions. And I'm kind of that middle person between the select board and the rest of government. Now, the select board does technically hire the fire chief and the police chief and a couple other positions, but by and large, everybody sort of falls under the camp of they report up to me as town administrator. Now, it's slightly different from town manager. Town manager has a little bit more of a management role and is a little bit more of the executive function, and it's a little bit of a nuance. So, for example, the select board has to sign off on all contracts and on all licenses and on all various things that they need to do. In a town manager form of government, some of that role can fall to the manager. So that there's just a little bit of nuance there. It's all basically how our town charter and town bylaws are written. That gives me the authority to do what I do, gives the select board the authority to do what they do, and then what's even broader is town meeting, which I know many of you are members of. Town meeting is essentially sort of the legislative branch of government, whereby they adopt or choose not to adopt any of the bylaws for the town, including zoning bylaws. They also approve or don't approve budgets or appropriation of funds. So anything that's funding appropriation related is handled by town meeting. Then it comes down to me as town administrator or the superintendent for school funding to then make sure that those funding commitments are in keeping with what's been appropriated by town meeting. So in a nutshell, I'm kind of like the sort of day-to-day administrator of the town or manager. It's not technically a manager at this point, but a lot of those functions still fall to me as town administrator.
That's a good overview. Carrie?
Oh, Jamie, I was just going to say, yeah, quite a few hats reporting to you.
It's a big operation. We have about 400 to 500 full-time employees, and then we have a number of seasonal employees as well.
Wow. Yeah. And congratulations on getting the sustainability committee going up in Everett. Wonder if they had an impact on the casino up there at all.
It was funny. I managed that project, the casino project, for the first 2 to 3 years of it coming to the town before they got the license, and pushed hard for sustainability. Luckily, the state was pushing hard for it as well. And that was a former Monsanto chemical company site. So there was about a $30 to $50 million environmental remediation that went along with that, which is amazing. So despite anybody's opinion about casinos and their role, the fact that those dollars went into cleaning up a site like that, which is right on the harbor, it's still tidal at that location. A lot of environmental issues. It will lead to a cleaner harbor front. So,
cool. Just a couple. I don't know if there are questions or just points maybe to ask about is when there's any updates about the broken tooth. I'm just wondering, since you know that we have residents can opt up to 100% renewable energy. I wonder if the town itself in their municipal buildings, if they're any closer to taking advantage of that itself. And lastly, from my personal standpoint, the intersection at Speen Street and Route 135, I know they redid that intersection, I don't know, 6 years or so ago. Was there any opportunity back then through eminent domain or whatever, to take a little bit of CVS's land and create a third lane as you're heading west there? That is just, I have to deal with that intersection a lot, and it's 6 or 8 cycles of lights to try and get through traffic backed up to VFW and beyond sometimes. So I'll let you take those in order.
Yeah, no, thank you. So why don't I start with the last one first, the Speen Street and 135, just because you talk a little bit about it even more. That intersection, interestingly, has been on my radar since I started here 7.5 years ago. And I know it's been on the town's radar even longer. There's actually a planning board decision predating my time with the town, whereby we have the ability to actually acquire an easement at that location at that CVS turn. The big challenges there are a couple things. One, engineering. That intersection is very tightly constrained, both with elevation to get up and over the train tracks, as well as the wetlands that are on really 3 of the 4 corners, because they're the lake system's right there. And if you probably spend time there, if you just go to the 3 corners that are not CVS, there's water all around. So you're really constrained by those factors. Interestingly, the state is looking at rebuilding that bridge. It's not a town-owned bridge. We don't own the bridge structure because it goes up and over an MBTA track. So I believe it's actually owned by the MBTA, which falls under Mass DOT, Massachusetts Department of Transportation. And we're trying to engage with them to help us try to address some of these questions. Because even though we could potentially add a turn lane there, the engineering is such to get up the elevation to go over that we can't touch that bridge. We don't own that piece of infrastructure. So there's got to be synergies there with regards to a right turn lane at that CVS intersection. And the timing of all the lights. There's a lot of traffic that's processed through that area. That adding a right turn lane without improving the larger intersection might not do exactly what it's intended to do, meaning if you can't get enough, there's enough through traffic heading west on 135 that if you don't get enough of a turn lane, only a couple cars might be able to get through before that through traffic backs up. And then even if you're turning right, you might not be able to get up to that right turn lane area. So we have looked at this a number of times, but you're about to say something.
Yeah, possible. I've been here 19 years and driven up that intersection so many times. I know that the number of cars heading west are looking to turn right onto Speen versus left onto Speen towards Roche Brothers is significantly higher. I wonder if there's just a short-term solution, reconfigure change the left-hand lane to going straight and left turn, and the right one, which currently goes straight and right, to just a right-hand turn. If that makes sense to you.
I think the challenge there might be that if you have one car turning left,
holding
you
up
lose all the throughput of everybody trying to go straight on 135. So
what you're saying is the traffic.
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy solution that we've been able to find anyway. And I've looked at that intersection with engineering consultants. We've looked at it internally. We've looked at it with folks from the state Metropolitan Planning Organization. They've come out and done an intersection survey of that area. We're actually also advancing. We're looking at that intersection in the triangle that you have there between Speen and 135, 135 and Mill Street, and then Mill, Pond, and Speen, and seeing maybe there's a way that we can get those three intersections working together. We don't have a solution yet, but we're trying to do anything we can there to try to advance that discussion, because it's not just 135, it's also Speen, and then those intersections working together. Next one, missing tooth. So the missing tooth, I'm actually looking out my window. It's right behind me. The property, the developer for that has hit some, just like a lot of developers are hitting cost increases due to the pandemic, post-pandemic, and they're not rethinking, but they're trying to ensure that they can get their cost per square foot down before they put a shovel in the ground. They're still very much wanting to advance that project. It's got approvals from the planning board, so it's ready to go. It just needs the developer to sort of pull the trigger on pulling the building permits. So there might be some modifications to that, but I don't think they're going to be significant enough to stop the project. It's just going to potentially just need to be reviewed at some level. But we have been in contact consistently with the project owner. Stuart Rothman is his name. He's out of Newton, and he's very much still wanting to do the project. So it's not as if it's still strictly mainly because of the economics currently. And then energy. Yes, we're always looking at ways that we can improve our energy and our use of sustainable energy, as you noted. I tend to defer a lot of my answers back to Jillian on that front and our facilities department, because they have a very strong handle on our energy and how we can use sustainable energy. I know there's some requirements that we need to work with through the state. So I would, again, I'm not the expert on that front, but I would have to pull in Jillian to this conversation more completely. A big factor for us is just we consume so much energy that is a pretty significant budget constraint, and it's a monetary item. So that's something that we just, as a community our size, we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, thanks. And kudos to you, Carrie, for slipping in 3 questions there. But anyway, Tom, let's move to you.
Questions.
Hi there, Jamie.
Hi, Tom.
I want to take this opportunity quickly to give a kudos to one of your employees. Her name is Marta Kabalin, in the facilities project manager.
Yep. Yeah, Marta, she's great.
Yeah, I'm partially disabled, and I was under the misapprehension that there was no wheelchair button to get into town hall. So I contacted her because I said project, and she says, I have no idea who's supposed to be looking at that, but let me investigate it, and I'll get back to you. About a week later, she sends me an email showing the button that I never saw in all the years. It's up on the right-hand side, not the left. Pictures of it all. And she went out of her way, even though it wasn't her job, to take care of me. And I just want to let you know, she's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, she's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
We actually had a recent issue with that exact, not the button, but the mechanisms at that door that we had to fix recently because it actually broke. So we had to get it fixed. I think she worked on that as well.
Yeah.
That's excellent that you pass that along, Brian. Tom.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Often people they only think when they want to complain, not say kudos. So thank you for that. Brian.
Good morning. As long as we're on the roadway work, I'll tie into the water quality. You know, Route 27 has been worked on for a long time. The 27 and 30 project, probably 5 years ago. And it looks like we've got 3 more years before the bridge is going to be done at Route 9. And all this work is very impactful because it's been focused a lot on the stormwater drainage system. And Snake Brook, where the project kind of started, was scheduled to have a settling pond and a structure there where this new drain came in, and that is not being done. It's the plan is being reworked. It's sitting there waiting for them to kind of revisit it. And in the meantime, nothing, you know, there's no settling. It's like the old raw debris is dumping into the brook, and it's negatively affecting the water quality. And I think it's the DOT's responsibility. And then if you look at the DOT a little harder, you'll find that their salvage yard where they put all their dirt and stuff, which is off Route 27 by the Pike Rest area, is a huge pile of debris that has a little bit of silt fencing around it, and that's mostly crushed in, and so very little environmental controls. And then if you take a look at over on the Pike where they store all their ground up asphalt, there's so many things that the DOT has done and is doing that I think is harmful to the environment. And I think they've been tasked with trying to improve that, but they kind of fall into their old ways and aren't tasked with doing this. And the amount of time that it's taken for them to get these projects to where they are seems to be kind of almost unreasonably slow from my point of view. You know, here we are driving through it every day, and it's hard on the vehicles, hard on traffic, and kind of hard on the community when you've been living in it for a long time. So I hate to be the grind, but that does affect me, and I'd really like to see an effort to speed things up and kind of make it better as it's happening, with like the crews that are working there being a little more responsible on picking up and doing the little details along the edge that's important for projects like this. And I hold the utility companies responsible for a lot of their lack of effort to remove old lines and poles and stuff that are right in the middle of the new sidewalks. I wish the town would make an effort to kind of do something about that. And the new work that has happened, like Cochituate State Park's new boat ramp and stuff, doesn't solve the problem of the parking and the traffic that is on Route 30. And it seems like the community could get involved in those things to kind of nudge the state to be a little more user-friendly. So that's my 2 cents, and thanks for your help.
Thank you, Brian. Well, first, that was a lot. But all very valid points and all good points. I'll just make a couple points there. One, we have been actively trying to advance a lot of what you just talked about, if not all of what you just talked about. The Snake Brook issue has been sort of the bane of my existence for at least 4 years. And it's not, I would not say that it's a DOT issue, actually. I would put that a little bit more on Department of Conservation and Recreation, whereby while we were doing the design work for that project, we kept providing and seeking input from DCR. And it wasn't until about a week before we were submitting our final plans to DOT for construction that they came to the table and said, whoa, wait a minute, we need to redesign this and we need you to do X, Y, Z. We're still waiting for DCR to give their final approvals on that project. for Snake Brook. It should have been constructed by now, but for DCR, I'm going to throw them a little bit under the bus here, although I will say that they are also understaffed and under-resourced. They're a state agency that's chronically understaffed and under-resourced. So I'm just letting you know a little bit of the sort of dynamics there. Part of that I think is a little bit out of DOT's control and more in DCR's control. Since we've passed the project to DOT, we've had a little bit less control over certain things because it's no longer a town project. For that project, we, the town, did all the design work, and then we pass it to DOT because they have the construction funding through federal and state resources. So then we are a little bit out of the loop where we can't push quite as much as we could if we were in control of it. I'm going to take back some of the questions or some of the concerns you noted with regards to their staging areas. There might be something that our Conservation Commission or Conservation Agent can do there by engaging with the state's conservation person on that front. I just want to make note of the Snake Brook because that has been something that we've been actively trying to get completed, because you're correct, there will be a hugely improved stormwater system at that location, because previously there was nothing. All the roadway pre-construction, putting a shovel in the ground, all the roadway runoff just went right into the brook. Our goal was to improve that, and we did it. We designed something that we felt did that, and we're still waiting for DCR to give sort of final sign off on that front. So there's just a little bit of need for sort of pushing on that area. On the boat ramp and on Route 30, yeah, I mean DCR and the Cotuto State Park is a very popular park. I know our police force is constantly working with our partners to improve mobility. It's an issue that we're constantly grappling with. And then just in general, with regards to the Route 27 North Main Street construction, you're absolutely correct. North Main Street, not including the Route 9 bridge, will be under construction for a little while longer. I know they're making advancements and it's getting there, but it's going to be a little bit longer through the fall and obviously into next spring. And then the 927 interchange is going to be a major project, and that will also improve stormwater. As you know, that's actually a low spot on Route 9 where they have a lot of stormwater challenges. And the intent of that 9 and 27 interchange project is to, among other things, improve the stormwater, as well as just improve mobility through that area for all users. There's going to be a heavy focus on pedestrians and cyclists through that interchange, which is, I think, a net benefit for the town. Because there's a lot of demand going over there. Every time I'm on that road, whether it's when I'm just inspecting something and I'm on my feet, or when I'm driving, I see kids trying to get to Wilson, or I see parents trying to get to Stop and Shop to do some shopping, or I see just people just trying to get through that area from south to north or north to south. It's not an easy interchange to get through in any vehicle, let alone if you're a cyclist or a pedestrian.
Yeah, a lot of challenges there.
If I could throw in one more thing, is the salt that's being used and is a big part of this runoff, I think, is such a negative impact on the lake. If another thing that the town should reconsider on limited salt use, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at different ways that we can adjust during winter events. Are really all materials that we put on roadway systems. They do a lot of pre-treatment, which helps, and it reduces the amount of salt that it needs to be used because they can pre-treat. But again, our stormwater improvements are part of that as well, especially at Snake Brook, as you noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ricky, I know you've had your hand up. You just have to come off mute there. You can find the mute button. There you go. Yep.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Ricky.
This past Thursday, we had a Democratic Town Committee picnic, and our guest of honor was Governor and Mrs. Michael Dukakis. And way back in the 70s, he appointed me to the State Housing Appeals Board, which was the very first iteration of that board. And I represented selectmen in the state. And I'm still with housing after all these years. And the latest excitement that I feel is about the Elliott School and the possibility of turning that property into a historic, well, it's already in a historic district, but to turning it into affordable housing with an attached amounts to a little senior center for the community and connected by the Natick connector to transportation. And I think that I'm just so excited about that possibility. I know that there is a RFP going out from the board, from the select board on that issue. And I'm wondering, since it is very much in keeping with the master plan to increase the number of affordable units in this town, if there is a predisposition towards seeing that converted into affordable units.
Excellent question. This is one where I have to get back to you on that one, Ricky, and about the specifics of the question. I think you're spot on with regards to the excitement of that property being as an opportune site for redevelopment in a way that is keeping with supporting services and supporting the community. I think that is, from what I understand, the clear goal of the select board and of the intent of the RFP. The final details of the RFP, I believe, are primarily worked out, but I'd have to defer to the committee is largely met and it's now in the hands of the select board to finalize. They're working through their final details, and I think they're intending to release the RFP this fall. The benefit of this fall rather than the summer is just interest. It's hard to get interest over a summertime when people are not people are on vacation. Right, they're on the beach, exactly. So we want to make sure we have the strongest interest in the responses so that we get the most creativity. I think, in my opinion, somebody that can actively repurpose that building for, it can be a host of different uses, including affordable housing, but also other community improvements. And that site has access, or at least frontage, on the Charles River.
Yes,
I see a lot of opportunity for that property to be an asset for the community. Just one thing about affordable housing that I always advocate for and look for is diversity throughout a community, access to services, ensuring that it's in a location that has access to transportation and services, because it's important for community, really anybody within the community, to have access to those services, regardless of how they might be able to afford certain types of transit or certain types of accommodations to get to and from community resources. So I always try to find one, integration within a community from both geographic and programmatic, but also access to services, in my opinion, is also extremely important when it comes to placement of affordable housing.
The other issue when it comes to diversity is that there is an opportunity to link up with Native peoples and give them an opportunity to have affordable units in the land of their origin. So there is a real opportunity for that particular housing to create opportunities for Native peoples as a preference, in the same way as we give preference to veterans. And I think that it would be a significant, not only symbolic, but actual way of reconnecting with our past in a positive way. That would be very, very meaningful, I think, for the town. The other question that I have, and now I have to remember it. Hang on, give me a second. Besides that, the missing two. Oh, I know. You are aware that there are a group of us led by Dinesh and Randy Johnson, and including Jay and myself, and a newer gentleman whose name escapes me right now, from the Historic District Commission, from the Historic Commission, And we are all working on the passage of the CPA in September. And I hope that the select board and the administration will actively get behind this ballot issue, because in my opinion, or whatever that's worth, it is a steady source of income to the town with a minimal investment that really pays dividends. I don't know of any investment that gives you the kind of return on what you put in that you get from the state. There, we don't have to worry about being the first town to do it. There are 181 cities and towns who've done it before us, and they all think it's a good thing. So I hope, again, that the select board and that the administration will actively get behind this ballot issue and see to it that we have access to these funds.
Thank you, Ricky. I'm not sure much to comment there. It's a CPA is a program that is very well known throughout the Massachusetts. I was actually, when I started here working for the town about 7-8 years ago, surprised Natick wasn't already a CPA community at that time. I live in a CPA community. I've worked in them before. For me, the big question is not should we do it? It's more how does it get properly managed? Because I'd want to make sure that those dollars, really any tax dollars, and I know this is a surcharge, but it's still dollars coming from the community, are used and maximized to the greatest extent possible for the greatest benefit. So that's really what my focus would be on should that pass.
Thank you. That's actually a good segue to one half of my two-part question, which is Natick relating to all the other towns and cities in the state. Jamie, I was interested, that you mentioned that we're one of the largest, if not the largest, town managed by town administrator or a particular form in the state. I know back when we were having select board candidates meet with us, some of them, or at least one, was having the opinion that Natick maybe needs to look at moving to a city like Framingham did. And so I guess part one of the question isn't whether you think we should move to a city, but just if you have any perspective on, given our size and the growth in our size, do you see any particular pressure points that our current form of government in Natick, really creates obstacles or more of a problem? And then related to that, and really tying to Ricky's thing or your comments about CPA, are there any formal mechanisms whereby towns and cities with similar demographics and so forth relate with each other to just trade ideas and solutions and so forth? Is it more just kind of an informal network? Are there like councils where you got the benefit of speaking with your counterparts throughout the state?
Mass Municipal Association.
Yeah, Ricky's not wrong. So to that last point, the Mass Municipal Association, within which there's different divisions and different committees. There's also a Mass Municipals Managers Association that allows for municipal managers, whether it's a town administrator, city administrator, town manager, city manager, mayors, can come together and talk about issues that we're all facing or ways of just sharing information. The MMA, or Mass Municipal Association, is as part lobbyist group as well. They help advance at the state level, at the state house, initiatives and policies and funding opportunities and advocacy for things that are being considered at the state legislative level or at the governor's level that can benefit communities and the management of communities. There's also topic-specific organizations, like on the planning side, there's the Massachusetts APA, or American Planning Association, Massachusetts chapter. At the state level or the national level, there's the APA for planners, there's the ICMA, or International, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the the acronym, but it's basically a national advocacy group for municipal managers. And there's a whole host of things at the local level as well for all of us to connect. I'm regularly on emails with regional managers. I actually know many of them just from my professional experience and past personal experience. Text messaging each other all the time, just saying, hey, how did you deal with this? Or going out for lunch with so-and-so, just because we need to have good relations and need to understand what we're all doing. With regards to the governance question, I kind of encourage people not to say we want to become a city versus stay a town, because it's really less about town versus city, and it's more about town meeting form of government versus council form of government. Those are the two of the three basic forms of government in Massachusetts the state sort of encourages or allows. I see really in all communities that I've worked in ways to become more efficient and improve the governance structure. Now it's really up to the citizenry to determine which ones come into play, which ones we should adopt. I'm really here just to work for the community. But little things that I find frustrating in my job, or at least opportunities for improvement, include things like signing of contracts. I don't have the authority as an administrator to sign contracts that are above, I think the dollar amount is $10,000 or $14,000. That needs to go to the select board. Yet it's already been appropriated by town meeting for a purpose that has been approved by the finance committee, town meeting, select board. And then let's say I had a contract, I need to wait 2 weeks or a week to get on a select board agenda. That potentially is holding up a project that could be starting construction sooner rather than later. So little things like that. Similarly, personnel matters. You know, we deal, especially in the current environment of having to make decisions on job descriptions and on hiring opportunities. You know, I need to have that flexibility as a strong administrator to be able to do that. Now we've been able to work with a really strong personnel board, but it's a volunteer board that I need to wait for them to call a meeting to make any amendments to a job description. They're fantastic to work with and they always respond in kind, but we can be more efficient with how we do that from a hiring practice perspective. And even just the town meeting form of government can, the process leading up to that can be cumbersome with, in my opinion, sometimes it's process for the sake of process rather than process for the sake of improvement. So for example, if one were to look at the calendars for the last several years of town meeting, not just town meeting, but the lead up to town meeting, when one takes into account all the select board, finance committee, other board and committee meetings, and you map that out on the calendar, from January until about May, you're in some type of week where you have at least one, if not multiple meetings related to town meeting prep or town meeting itself. If there's a desire to have meaningful engagement outside of town meeting, which after doing the Native 2030 master plan, there's a lot of people that just aren't engaged at the town meeting level. It's hard to do that because you're looking at maybe a couple weeks in the fall and a couple weeks in the spring to have meaningful engagement. Because once summer hits or once you have school vacations or holiday times, it's challenging to do that meaningful engagement with people who aren't already sort of in the know. So I ask people to look at council form of government, not because I'm advocating for it, but because it's another way of looking at how to do things, or even just a more efficient form of town meeting, whereby we could maybe get through some of our process a little bit more efficiently, or look at ways to have our boards and committees do co-meetings or meet at the same time, so that, you know, we might give the, like, for example, the budget discussion that's required to go in front of the select board, the FinCom, the school committee, just the initial budget presentation, and then there's subcommittees at each one of those levels. That's a lot of time, and that can be more efficient. So I'm always looking at ways to try to make things a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more efficient, partially because you're all volunteering your time to do this. And I know many volunteers, some in, you know, like 4 or 5 nights a week, but some maybe only 1 night a week. And as we're seeing a generational shift, there's fewer and fewer people, I think, that I'm seeing anyway, coming into the role of volunteers, at least until they can get to a socioeconomic or family level where they can put the time into it. You know, it's challenging as a father of 3 myself. it's challenging for me to be engaged in my hometown because of job commitments and then family commitments. So I would look, for me, it'd be better to look for ways to become more efficient in what we do. Not to say that we want to lose transparency. In fact, I'd want to make it even more transparent, but I think there's ways that we can become more efficient. And the timing can be a challenge. So the example I give to a lot of people is there was an item that came across my desk about 3 days after the warrant closed this past February that could have been prepped for the Springtown meeting. And the work could have been done this summer. It was a reappropriation of funds that came in, actually weren't even town funds. They came in from a project that was completed in the private sector that we had access to those funds. And all we were doing was saying, instead of using it for this initial purpose, we want to use it for this purpose. It had gotten the approval of the private industry, gotten the approval of, received approval from the planning board. It was ready to go forward, but it came to my desk 3 days after the warrant closed. I now have to wait until fall town meeting, which means the work can't be completed until next summer. That's stuff that could have been done this summer for the benefit of the community. So when I look at that, just simple example as, is that truly an efficient way of using our staff resources, our monetary resources, our volunteer time? I see opportunity for improvement. What that actually is a different story. That's not, I want to help inform that discussion. I point to communities that have either worked more efficiently with town meeting or communities that have adopted some components of council, like Amherst recently adopted a council, Franklin is a council form of government, Greenfield, Massachusetts is like, there's examples out there that we can all look towards that can help become more efficient in what we do, but still keep a lot of our town process engagement components so that we're still an engaged community. I think if you look at some of those examples, the community is just, if not more engaged than they were before they made some of those government adjustments and reforms.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, lots of challenges.
Speaking this could be its own topic for coffee one more.
I did also want to note that we're now past 10 o'clock, and I'm not sure that either Martin or I ever really told you this is an all-day event. Jamie, we'll go to a coffee. No, I'm sure you got other things to do, but we've got looks like 3 more questions anyway, and then maybe we can try to start to wrap it up. Is assuming you've got a little bit more time to spend.
Yeah, let's go through the questions if we could.
Yeah,
that should be okay.
Yeah, thanks. Brinley.
Hi, hi. Thank you, Jamie, so much for staying and continuing with the questions. I have a few. Because of time, I'll go mostly to my most important one, but I will say that since we were talking about roads and stuff, the issue was brought up. I will say, I do think that the signs in the middle of the new sidewalks is maybe should find a way to be moved up the list a little. I don't know how the complaining works for our neighborhood, but we have a couple of blind people in our neighborhood who use sticks and a couple of other people who are definitely mobility limited. And especially the corner of 27, the northwest corner of 27 and Curve Street, there's a sign right in the middle that makes it, I mean, 2 people can't really even walk abreast in that little corner there because of the sign that's in the middle of the sidewalk. I don't know how that works in terms of priority listing, but outside of the telephone poles and everything else, that's a really tough corner.
This is specific to South Main Street, so south of town heading towards Sherburne?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that project is ongoing, so the current sidewalk there's still some work to be done, but I'll confirm that with regards to the signs.
That would be great, because I've watched some mobility challenged people maneuver around that, and it's definitely an issue. Yep. I will say, on a plus, we love the speaking crosswalk signs. Thank you so much for whoever put those in place, and always thank you to everybody who worked so hard on that. It's incredible. My biggest thing that I've noticed that I don't feel like I see a lot of talking about isn't just the transparency of town, but it's the communication. So the dam committee did a great job of getting information out. I still meet people who had no idea that it's going on. the closure of Johnson School, the building of Memorial. The school department does a fantastic job of putting out a newsletter. However, if you don't subscribe to that newsletter, you don't get any of that information unless you're looking for it. So when all of that was going on, communication was going on, there was still a large part of the town that had no idea that those discussions were happening. As a room parent, I spent many, many years as a room parent learning that the challenge of communication, I feel, is that we as a culture and society have moved so much electronic that the loss of something like the print version of Natick Tab and Bulletin
Right.
has really, really, really affected the equity of communication in our community. I regularly had to call parents to get important information out because there's a language barrier. Even though we do a great job of making everything that you can get every version of language that you want in the electronic, it's still in the electronic version. And there are a lot of people that emails and electronic versions are just a very difficult way to get the communication. And because there's so much of it, it's that crazy flood. And so I know families where the parents aren't together. And so the communication, one person gets the communication, and the only communication that they relay to the other party is the stuff that's immediately pertinent to them, and not all of the other information that might be pertinent to the other half of the party or is pertinent to town living. And I don't have a lot of suggestions. I feel like this is an extremely, extremely challenging part as we move forward in our culture of going electronic. But I really would love to know if you guys are actively working on a thought process for how to reach that, how to make communication more equitable, and how to get just more of it out. I know we talk about people participating in government. I would like for people just to even know. I started working really hard on this a couple of years ago. And when I was in one little small community, I didn't realize how broad it is now that my children are in high school and middle school, and we do more broad sports teams. I've realized that this is really a town-wide thing, getting the communication out of what's going on. And I would love to hear your thoughts about that being on a priority list, and if there's any thoughts to working on it to get the information out even more so that people really do know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're certainly hitting a big point of the select board and myself. Having been in the planning side of government for 15 years before coming into the town administration side, my entire job, not my entire job, but a good focus of that job was about community engagement. For example, just here in Natick, when we're doing the Native 2030 master plan, knowing it's an uphill battle to have people engaged with a process like that, we did a number of things to get the word out just about that process. We did a whole house mailing with postcards where we sent out thousands upon thousands of postcards to every single household. We posted on Facebook. We actually did targeted advertisements on Facebook specific to people who are using Facebook in Natick. And we also did flyers in key locations throughout. Like we did a multi-pronged approach to engagement for that process. And every single meeting we had when we were at the Wilson Middle School or at this place where we were engaging with people, if there was another event going on, I had multiple people say, I didn't even know this was going on. How come I didn't know about this? So it is, in some respects, it has to be a two-way street, but we need to make sure that people feel like it's worth the engagement. A couple of things that we're doing very proactively on the town side. One, we are actually actively looking for, and we have second round interviews tomorrow, actually, on a communications director for the community, which is fantastic. We also have appropriated funds for a director of equity, inclusion, and outreach. Now that is going to be an equity focused position, but it's very deliberately has outreach and inclusion in the title. because we want to figure out ways that we can make equitable engagement and equitable outreach and access to information a part of what we do is every day as a community. On top of that, I was successful at getting a $200,000 earmark from our state delegation. Thank you to the state delegation. They were fantastically supportive of this, specific to communications improvements. We haven't spent that money yet. I want our communications director on board before we start spending that money, but that will help us with strategizing and really just improving our ability to engage with the community. And in reality, there's no one right answer. There's going to be lots and lots of small answers, and it has to be a multimedia, multi-pronged approach. And it's also got to be over time. We won't be able to, it's not as if we can just implement something tomorrow and then, oop, everybody's engaged. There has to be a very concerted and deliberate and consistent effort to do that.
Yeah.
All very good points, though.
Step one is
Thank you so
recognizing
much.
that it's a challenge, and looks like we got that clearly there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Ricky, before I get to you, Cindy's had her hand up, and then we can
Right.
circle back. Yeah. Cindy, you're on mute still. You got to come off mute, Cindy. There
I
you
went
go.
to unmute myself and then I was clicking on your square.
Oh.
Yeah, the screen's all moved from our end at least.
So actually my main thing has to do with communication. Through a complaint I lodged with the city of Newton about a parking meter that ate some quarters, I'm now subscribed to the mayor's weekly email. And it's been a couple of years, and I still enjoy reading it, and I would be happy to share one with you if that would be helpful, or you could get in touch with whoever writes it for her. But she covers all kinds of things for the city, and then there's often several postscripts which are non-official, like talking about this Girl Scout troop or that whatever that she puts after her signature, so squeezing in a little bit of extra. And there's usually photographs and like sometimes I forward it to my mom, like, hey mom, they're going to be redoing the bridge, because my mom lives in Weston. They're going to redo the bridge over the Charles River, Route 30. So I would suggest that as an excellent format for people who subscribe, and once you get their email, you can put them on, and then if they want to unsubscribe, they can.
Can you share a link to that in the chat, Cindy?
It's not a link, it's
Oh.
it's an actual email. I can forward it to you, Doug, the
Okay.
next one I get.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
My second thing about communication, having grown up in Weston, my parents, got the town report. And so when I moved here, I went to the library, and it was during COVID. And I'm like, no, can't go into the library. And no, I couldn't borrow it because it's locked up, and you have to only look at the town report when you're in the library. So eventually I was able to obtain a copy from the town hall. Now my suggestion, which I actually tried to make at the library level, but then we have a change of administration there, is make 5 or 6 or a dozen or whatever copies that circulate at the library, and have the library put them on display when they first come out, and let people borrow them. I find it really interesting reading. I don't know, page 50 or something, but it's so much nicer for me to not have to read everything on the computer. And so I know there's a stash up there in the town clerk's office, and my plan with this one is to take it to the library and say, I'm making this a donation on condition that you circulate it, which is what I did before, but I have no idea what happened. And I definitely know that it is available online, but I think
Yeah,
that
I just figured I'd put that out there for folks
Yeah.
who might be.
Yeah.
There's
And then I guess a couple other things is I've filled out the C-click fix, which is it works quite well. But what I find quite frustrating is when you submit a thing and then they write back within like 3 minutes and say, yeah, we'll look at that. We'll investigate that further. That's the sort of standard. And then a month goes by, 2 months goes by, and or a month goes by, and I write back and say, so what have you found in your investigation? And then I don't really hear anything. And it would seem to me that if they say that they're investigating something, that there should be a time frame by which time they give an answer, like, we're not going to do this, or it's got to be in next year's budget, or we're going to be on it in 5 weeks, or something. And the particular instance that I'm now thinking about is I ride until I have this hip thing. I like to ride my bicycle if I'm doing errands up on Route 9 or out in Framingham or in the western part of Wellesley. So I'm riding and on 135, and I noticed a sign with a picture of a bicycle with a line, and then I didn't know what it was, but then I found an intersection where there was actually the picture of a bicycle on the pavement. But in the place where I first saw the sign, there was no picture on the pavement, so I had no idea what it was about. And since that time, I found several instances where there's the sign up, standing up, vertical, but then there's nothing, or it's completely faded. You can't see it. And you can't, there's a section on 135 where it feels very squeezed on a bicycle, and then suddenly you're in Framingham and there's a bike lane. So it would be nice from the station around that place, like it's pretty wide as you go through get to Speen Street, and then as you get in that next stretch, especially going up that hill past the station and coming down into Framingham, it feels a little narrow for being on a bicycle. And then one question is, on Route 9, I've walked from Route 27 all the way to Oak Street, that section. And there's one, I don't know if it's town land, but it's open space and it's a swamp and it's full of trash. And if people are throwing stuff out the window as they drive, or it gets plowed over and it gets falling down with the snow, how does that get cleaned up? Is that a state, like, I don't know. It's just, and it's full of poison ivy, but it's really ugly looking if you're walking on that sidewalk. Those are my things.
A lot. And
But looking at timing, I'll try to be brief.
You can pick it.
And you don't have to answer any of them.
And Pat will be the last question we'll take, I think. But
yeah, I mean, some of what you talked about with regards to signage, and that's part of that's just education of the people with regards to what signs mean. Some signs for bikes mean that it's a shared bike lane or a sharrow.
Sorry, it was very clear to me what it meant when I came to an intersection where it was painted on the ground.
Right.
But
I'm
when
saying
I
sometimes
came to
the signs.
sign and there was nothing on the ground, I was like, what?
Yep.
It says stop on whatever. So it's a question of aligning what's on the sign with what's painted on the surface. And you don't need to answer that one. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, just signage in general, we're actively looking at all improvements for signage.
Great.
With regards to 135, we also are actively seeking and looking at how can we improve, at least on the western part of town, from Speen Street all the way down to the Framingham town line. Can we get, what can we do from an engineering perspective to add more consistent sidewalks and bike lanes?
Great.
That's definitely a priority. I've been advocating to try to get funding for that, and we've been looking at it from a public works perspective to see what we can do on our end. Some of that is just understanding what our limitations are and opportunities are along that stretch, because there's different property owners and different demands on that section of roadway. And then with regards to C-Click-Fix, that's a good tool when it's used well and when we can respond well to it. That is one of the low-hanging items that is going to be on the communication director's sort of front to make sure that we have a more sustainable model for management of that resource. We have been looking at other resources that are similar to that, but C-Click-Fix seems to be a pretty usable interface, so we think we're going to stay with it. But we like the idea of what it provides. We just need to make sure that we're more consistently following up.
Right. Thank you for all that. So let's we'll do Ricky and then Sarah and then Pat, and then we'll wrap up. So Ricky.
Thank you, Doug. the issue of communication. And I think some of it is a generational one, because old people like me are used to having the newspaper. And for ones who don't see so well, they're used to getting their news on TV, on cable. I really like the education that I get from Pegasus. And I think we need to make more people aware that Pegasus is around and that they can, in fact, listen to planning board meetings. They can listen to select board meetings. They can hear the ZBA discuss something that's going on in their neighborhood. All of these things need wider acknowledgement in the community. I'm running across a lot of people who are moving into town who have no way of knowing what's going on here. There used to be something like the welcome wagon. When I first came to Natick, they came to my house and they had copies of the local newspaper, the Suburban Press. Now I know there isn't a Suburban Press, and now there isn't even a Natick tab, but I think that the town needs to contact on a one-to-one basis with the editor of the Middlesex News and try and get them to dedicate a reporter to Natick. We get the paper and we see that Hudson is heavily featured, so is Milford, so is Marlborough and Framingham, and there's hardly anything about Natick. So we need to work hard, I think, to get that Middlesex newspaper to allocate more space to us and to have a reporter to better their own communication. I tried for 2 days to get through by phone to the Middlesex News, and nobody was answering their phone. So I think we really need to lobby them hard, and they need to know that there is a constituency out here in Natick who would like to receive news through their outlet. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to get a news director in town, and that's one avenue I hope they pursue.
Thank you, Ricky. Sarah?
So I have, I don't know if these really qualify as questions as much as comments. In terms of the communication issue, one of our previous town administrators used to put a one-page letter in with the quarterly tax bills. And one of the advantages of that was it didn't, it was a mailing that was already going out, so it didn't add a cost. Obviously, it wouldn't hit the rental market, but it would hit the homeowners just in terms of, like, for instance, when 2030 was going on, it would have been a place that a lot of people could have been informed about that. So I remember thinking that was a great idea, that it was just a one-pager, just kind of thumbnails about what was going on in town, but something that, I thought it was a creative thing in that it didn't have a real significant budgetary impact on the town because it was a mailing that was already going out. I just wanted to quickly circle back to C-Click Fix. I think I have not used that system myself, but I just want to give a shout out to the DPW. Over the years, I've called them several times for various issues and they've been extremely responsive. So again, I know, we talked about only complaining and not giving people credit, but I've been very impressed with how responsive the DPW has been. And then just on a personal note, Jamie, I was really interested to hear you had worked in the Brownfields area and the casino at Everett. I retired now, but it was a licensed site professional for many years doing hazardous waste site cleanup, worked on the Everett site. That was
That's fun.
big project for my company. They, we had squadrons of people there for
Yep.
many years working on what used to be called Chemical Lane, which is the greatest name
Yep.
ever. So anyway, just was interested to hear that. And, if anything ever comes up in town where you want a quick once over from, an LSP looking at, I'm retired now, but I'd be happy.
Thank
I'm
you,
the
sir.
one that stands up at town meeting and explains stuff about environmental stuff. So anyway.
Which I've agreed and been glad that you were there at times, because I'm in my seat saying that's not right, and then sure enough, as an LSP, you stand up and it's like good, somebody is setting the record straight.
Yeah.
With regards to the brownfield stuff, it's something that I learned on the job. I'm not an LSP, but I've worked a lot with LSPs. Natick fortunately doesn't have nearly as many challenges as some of the more urban areas of the state, but worked on all types of sites. Anyway, with regards to the communications question, general information or general packets of information to new homeowners, or a weekly or monthly newsletter, or quarterly newsletter. I do remember Martha White doing that. It's been something that has been on my list of things to bring back. I just want to make sure that once we start something, I can keep with it. The last thing I want to do is put a quarterly newsletter in there and say it's going to be quarterly, and then, I don't actually do it with the next quarter. So that's part of the reason why this past year I've been really focused on just rebuilding the team. And getting what we need to do well, and then do the add-ons after that. And communications is top on the list of what I know we need to do better on. It's definitely a top focus, which is why we have so many resources going towards it now.
Yeah. No, it's not a criticism, just a suggestion of something that might be kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I did use the quarterly newsletter and the common guide when that was still going. For the Natick 2030 outreach 5-6 years ago, we did have regular parts like a little advertising block in the common guide that would come out through the community senior center. And I put it on as many other places that I could. Again, this is where I say communication still has to be a two-way street. We can put it out there, but we still need people to be able to respond to it and get back to us.
Great, thank you. Let's finish up with Pat. Pat, got to come off mute there.
Yes, hi, Jamie. I was gonna just ask about the work that Jay and Ricky and Randy Johnson and people have been doing for decades, affordable housing. It looks like to me that the Metro West suburbs or whatever have one big problem. They're going to continue to be whiter and whiter and whiter unless something can be done to something about housing, because the market forces driving housing development and construction look like they're just making almost every wealthy suburb, get wealthier and more untouchable. I was just curious if you work regionally with Wellesley, Sherburne, Ashland, Framingham. Do you folks work on this stuff? Because it seems like the private housing market is going to drive whiteness. We're all just going to become these basically pure middle-class white communities with a mixture of some Asian and East Indian high income professionals. And I don't know, what can we do about that?
You're hitting the challenge on the head. What can we do about it? And it does require, in my opinion, a more concerted federal and state effort. They're doing their part. I know the governor has been trying for many years to put housing first and have housing choice bills and break down the approval processes, or at least go from what was a supermajority for multifamily housing zoning, 2/3, actually not just super, but 2/3 vote at town meeting down to a majority vote at town meeting. All those things will help to ensure that we can create an atmosphere whereby affordable housing, or at least housing, and I consider affordable housing both to be the uppercase affordable, meaning those with deed restrictions, but also the lowercase affordable, entry housing that might not be deeded limited or deeded restricted. but lowercase affordable just for those who are entry to the market and want to invest in an area. Diversity of housing is a big key focus of what I think should be the focus of the region. It does require some regional work. And the work that I see being beneficial to that front is really engagement, advancing the dialogue at the local level, trying to make sure that people are fully behind that, because if people are behind it, then you're going to get decision makers behind it, including members at town meeting and members at the select board level or the planning board level, to be able to say, yes, this makes sense. This new zoning makes sense. This new advocacy around investment makes sense. Chipping away at it 1 or 2 units at a time, in my opinion, is not the best approach. I think there needs to be more partnerships and more targeted efforts to do substantive affordable housing development. Again, uppercase affordable and lowercase affordable. And diversity of housing preservation goes along with that as well. So it has to be a regional approach. It has to be a statewide approach. And again, there's been some good efforts already at the state level with funding and with policy changes. The housing choice bill that is currently being enacted is ensuring that communities that are benefiting from, for example, the MBTA, are then also doing their part in adjusting or amending their zoning to allow for housing development proximate to commuter rail stations or T stations. So that's something that we're actively pursuing. I think Natick for many years has been actually ahead of the curve on the region, because we have increased the number of housing units, not just affordable housing units, but just overall housing units. And it does get down to the economics, as you know. It's a supply and demand challenge that we're grappling with. And it's not unique to Natick, it's definitely regional. It's actually national now with coming out of the pandemic. Worldwide, actually, in many respects. I think we can learn from other places around the world and maybe bring some of those policies and some of those initiatives back here to Natick. But I think we can do more at the local level, but I also think we need to advance our partnerships at the regional and state level on that front. Doug, you're on mute now.
Yeah, yep, thanks. I want to thank you, Jamie, for spending so much of your Monday morning with us. It's been a great discussion. Great to hear so many things you're involved with. I also want to bring to light one thing that Ian put in the chat. He said, I'm curious to hear how we can support Jamie in working on some things that truly excite him and seem hopeful for our town. You don't need to respond to that right now, Jamie, but maybe let me just say that everybody on this Coffee with a Purpose community wants to be a resource for you. I think I can speak with confidence to that. So, anytime you think that there's something that we can help you with, reach out to us and we'll help you out as best we can. Also wanted to give a quick shout out to Pat. I was glad that he was the one to ask the last question. Great big important issue, but I also wanted to mention his email to us if you hadn't seen it earlier. There's going to be a Route 135 Fisk Pond cleanup this Friday afternoon. If anyone's got any time between 1 and 4, go find Pat in his trailer at the dog park or at the BFW. And it's actually in honor of Brett. So we should all be there if we can. This session now begins kind of our summer holiday. Jamie, you did an amazing job bringing us out in numbers on a summer Monday morning. But after this, at the moment, officially, we are on recess until the 12th of September, which is the day before our special town election, when we'll hear from Rich Sidney, who is running, we think, uncontested for that seat. Right. We may have a session in August to hear from a couple of state race candidates, Secretary of State candidate and a state auditor candidate, although I'm a little bit apprehensive about that only because we don't have the ability to offer an equal forum to candidates just through the logistics. So stay tuned to your emails on that. But other than that, let me close it out. Hopefully, Martin, you've turned the recording off at this point, and again, enjoy the rest of the day, everyone, and thanks again, Jamie.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the time today and your overall support for what we're trying to do. So thank you.
Great,
Take
thanks.
care. Thank you.